Hi, everybody. My name is Marc Bates. I'm a metabolic health coach, and today's topic is the carnivore vegan standoff, what science actually shows. So, your dinner plate has become a battleground where tribal dietary identities clash with the force of religious conviction. Few debates generate more heat and less light than the carnivore versus vegan standoff. Both sides claim science supports their position. Both cite studies. Both report dramatic health transformations. It's important to consider that both might be right about some things, even if they cannot simultaneously be correct about everything. What happens when we strip away the rhetoric and examine the actual mechanisms at play? The answer reveals something profound about nutrition science itself. The metabolic battleground. At the heart of the carnivore-vegan debate lies a fundamental question about which fuel should power the human body. Carnivore advocates argue that fat and protein represent our evolutionary fuel of choice. They point to ketogenesis, the body's ability to produce ketones from fat when carbohydrates are restricted, as evidence of our metabolic design for fat metabolism. Vegan proponents counter that glucose represents our primary fuel. They argue that the body preferentially uses carbohydrates with fat metabolism, serving merely as a backup system during starvation. Both perspectives contain partial truths while missing crucial context. The glucose-fat metabolic dance. The relationship between glucose and fat metabolism is governed by what scientists call the Randle cycle, a complex metabolic dance in which one fuel source can inhibit the utilization of the other. When glucose is abundant, your body preferentially burns it while storing fat. When glucose is restricted, your body burns fat while preserving glucose for tissues that require it. The metabolic flexibility evolved for a good reason. It allowed our ancestors to thrive during seasonal changes in food availability. Switching between fuel sources represents an evolutionary advantage, not a defect. What carnivore proponents get right, the body can function perfectly well with minimal dietary carbohydrates. Gluconeogenesis, the creation of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, can supply the relatively small amount of glucose essential tissues require. What vegan proponents get right, the body does use glucose efficiently when available, and many tissues preferentially use it when present. Both often miss the fact that metabolic flexibility may be the most crucial health marker, not the fuel you're currently using. Understanding and appreciating this concept can significantly enhance our understanding of the dietary science. The glycation question. One of the most contentious areas in this debate concerns glycation, the process where sugars bind to proteins and lipids, potentially causing tissue damage. Carnivore advocates argue that dietary carbohydrates drive glycation damage, contributing to aging and disease. They point to hemoglobin A1C tests measuring glycated hemoglobin as evidence that sugar damages tissues. Vegan advocates counter that fat metabolism can also contribute to oxidative stress and that properly functioning insulin sensitivity prevents glycation damage even with high carbohydrate intake. The research suggests a more nuanced reality. Glycation is a normal metabolic process in everyone. Its potential for harm depends on numerous factors, including insulin sensitivity, antioxidant status, and overall metabolic health. The concentration of blood glucose matters more than its source. Whether glucose comes from dietary carbohydrates or gluconeogenesis, elevated and fluctuating blood glucose levels increase glycation potential. The vitamin C paradox, right? No nutritional claim from carnivore advocates generates more skepticism than the assertion that meat contains sufficient vitamin C to prevent scurvy. Conventional nutrition textbooks state that fruits and vegetables are a necessary source of vitamin C. Yet historical evidence shows that fresh meat prevented scurvy among Arctic explorers and indigenous populations. Fresh meat does contain small but bioavailable amounts of vitamin C, about 16 to 25 micrograms, depending upon whether the animal is grain-fed or grass-fed. This seems insufficient to the 75 to 90 milligrams RDA daily until you consider an essential metabolic insight. Glucose and vitamin C share the same cellular transport, GLUT4, into the cell, meaning they compete for absorption. Vitamin C absorption becomes more efficient on a low carbohydrate diet since it does not compete with glucose for cellular uptake. This explains why the vitamin C requirements may be substantially lower on a carnivore diet. As little as 10 milligrams daily may prevent deficiency in a low-carb diet. The anthropological evidence. Beyond biochemistry, both sides evoke evolutionary arguments. Carnivore advocates point to isotope analysis of ancient human remains showing high levels of animal protein consumption throughout much of human evolution. They note our relatively small colons and large small intestines compared to true herbivores. Digestive anatomy more aligned with carnivores. Vegan advocates highlight our lack of specialized carnivore adaptations, like claws and fangs, and our ability to digest starches through amylase enzymes, evidence, they argue, of adaptation to plant foods. Anthropological evidence suggests humans evolved as opportunistic omnivores with a strong preference for nutrient-dense animal foods when available. Agriculture represents a relatively recent development in human evolutionary history, roughly 10,000 years compared to millions of years of evolution. This doesn't automatically validate either extreme dietary position, but it does suggest that humans can adapt to various nutritional patterns with potential trade-offs in each direction. Okay, real quick, I'd appreciate it a lot if you'd like, subscribe, hit the bell icon if you want to get notified of the latest episodes. It does help the channel a great deal. Thank you. Okay, the insulin debate. Few hormones generate more controversy than insulin in nutrition debates. Carnivore advocates view chronically elevated insulin as harmful, promoting fat storage and inflammation. They argue that minimizing carbohydrates keeps insulin low and stable. Vegan advocates counter that insulin resistance, not insulin itself, causes problems. They maintain that high carbohydrate, low fat diets improve insulin sensitivity, allowing efficient glucose metabolism without harmful effects. The scientific reality is that insulin serves essential functions beyond glucose regulation, including protein synthesis and cellular growth. Chronically elevated insulin and poor insulin sensitivity can cause problems through different mechanisms. What often gets overlooked is that insulin resistance can develop through multiple pathways, including chronic caloric excess, regardless of macronutrient composition, inflammatory signaling, and lipotoxicity when fat storage capacity is exceeded. Okay? Why both sides see results? Now, this is the interesting thing. Perhaps the most perplexing aspect of the debate is that followers of both dietary extremes report substantial health improvements despite their polar opposite approaches. Okay? Followers of both dietary extremes report substantial health improvements. This paradox becomes less mysterious when we consider what both diets eliminate: processed foods in high in refined carbohydrates, industrial seed oils, and food additives. All right? The health benefits may stem more from what's removed, especially on the vegan diet, than what's included, highlighting a common ground that both sides can agree on. Additionally, Both approaches typically increase nutrient density compared to standard Western diets. Carnivore diets provide abundant complex protein, B vitamins, zinc, and iron, while planned vegan diets can supply ample antioxidants, fiber, and phytonutrients. Both approaches also tend to reduce total caloric intake without deliberate restriction. Carnivores through high satiety from protein and fat, and vegans often through lower caloric density and increased fiber. Okay, so yes, you can see results on both a vegan and a carnivore-based diet. Beyond dietary tribalism, what if the most crucial factor isn't which extreme dietary position you adopt, but your metabolic health and adaptability? Metabolic flexibility, efficiently using different fuel sources as needed, may matter more than which fuel you predominantly use. Nutrient density likely matters more than macronutrient ratios for most people. The carnivore-vegan debate reveals as much about human psychology and tribal identity as it does about nutrition. We crave certainty in our area where science offers primarily probabilities and contextual insights. Okay? You gotta keep that in mind. Perhaps the wisest approach acknowledges the evolutionary evidence for animal foods and human diets and our remarkable adaptability to various nutritional environments. The most honest nutritional stance might be embracing uncertainty while continuing to refine our understanding through better science, more nuanced thinking, and less tribal attachment to dietary identities. Your optimal diet likely depends on your unique genetic makeup, health history, activity level, and goals, not on winning an ideological battle over which extreme position is universally correct. Now, if you ask me precisely, I will tell you that I prefer that the concept of the paleo type of a diet, whole foods, including both vegetables and animal products, based primarily on animal products as the primary source for your protein and fats. But I will tell you that the key issue for me as a health coach is how do we get you, if you're metabolically unhealthy, and that's upwards of 80% or more of the American population or the worldwide population is metabolically unhealthy, how do you get you to heal so that you have the ability to then have the metabolic flexibility? And that's where a heavy meat-based diet, like the carnivore diet, or a ketogenic with virtually no carbs, 20 grams or less per day, is the best healing diet to get your body back to metabolic flexibility. The only other thing I'll say about the carnivore versus vegan debate is if the human body was designed to eat nothing but plant materials, then where did the human body learn to get its B12, its EPA and DHA, which are heavily found in fish and grass-fed beef and lamb? Right? These are very important nutrients to get that without supplementation a vegan cannot survive very long. And also you have this issue of which one is long-term viable, right? I've actually been a vegan once in my life, and I've been a carnivore advocate, and I'll tell you that the diet that's easiest to sustain long-term is a carnivore diet that allows the occasional foray into vegetables and plant sources. Okay, so that's my take on it. Again, thank you for watching. If you would like, please go ahead and comment, ask questions, and suggest things you'd like me to cover in my next videos. Thank you so much.